Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and in this video we're going to go over an experimental feature. So it's technically not even an official feature of TypeScript yet. You have to actually, and the funny thing is probably one of the most used features I always notice in different frameworks for TypeScript. But in order to actually use this feature, which is called Decorators, you have to kind of make it available. Okay, and the way it works is you have to go all the way down here, and you'll see this thing here, experimental decorators. You just need to uncomment that out, and you'll have decorators available. What decorators allow you to do is they allow you to kind of like do something to something else, in a sense. So it allows you to create a function that decorates a class, a function, a variable, and when it decorates it, you'll have access to doing something with that thing. So let me show you a simple example. So what I want to do is that every time I create a class, I want to add it to this object here, okay? And so what I want to do, so basically I create a class, I want to be pushed to here so that way I have all my classes, all my constructors kind of in one object. This is one possibility. Creating sort of like a factory object is one possibility. So what I did is like here I just find a function. We call it my first dec for first decorator. Now you always want to pass in target, because basically what happens is that when you do a decorator, it attaches itself to whatever it's going to attach to and then passes it into the function as a target. And then you'll be able to access what it is, what's its name, and other properties. I haven't quite figured out what all the different properties you have access to yet, but we can do a lot just with the name and the actual thing itself. So the target is the function, the class, whatever gets passed in. Now you need it for TypeScript. You need to type it as any or something specific. So if you only wanted classes to come in there, I guess you could put class. Like, let's try that, because that's what I'm actually going to pass in. So let's see if that works. Class. Okay, and console.log. So what's going to do is going to console log the actual target's name, not what the target is, but the name of the target. So essentially the variable name. And then it's going to go assign that target to that function object, and see, it creates a dynamic property name based on the name of the target, and then the value of that property is going to be the target itself. So in this case, the class. So then what happens here, I'm creating this class called my class, some class. So I want to run that decorator by it. So what I do is I do this. I just put at first decorator, and then it knows that I want to run this as a decorator, and the very next thing that comes along, whether it's a variable, a function, a class, it's going to decorate it. And that's why I want to console log the target to make sure that it's actually decorating it. And then this class just has a couple of properties. That's great. And then we're going to console log the function list to make sure that it gets passed, that the decorator worked and passed in the class into the object over here. So let's run this. So it was working a second ago. The only reason it might not work now is because I changed the typing on the function. So let's see what happens. Okay. So ts node, practice ts. Let's see how it goes. Yep, I thought that was going to be a thing. Cannot find name class. I think it's because technically a class is really a function. It's really like a function that creates a new prototype. It's just something weird about how JavaScript works. Classes aren't like classes in other languages. Like if I scroll back up to where I was testing it out, see, when I actually console log the thing, see, it doesn't describe it as a class, it describes it as a function. So let's type in function. So basically I have to pass in a function. Let's see if that works. If not, I'll just put it back to any and it'll get the job done. ts node practice.ts. Okay. Yep, still doesn't want to pass it in. So we're just going to make it any. So you can pass in, the target can be anything. Because actually the target might be, no, it's the function. So cool. So we're going to pass that in. Any, I mean, we can check what the type is by doing like a type of, but we'll let that go. So see, now it runs. So first thing it does, it console logs the target name, because that's what the decorator does. Console logs the target name, which is some class, because again we're decorating the some class class. Then I actually assign it to the object. So here, assign it to the object, and then the next console log, we console log function list, which the only thing in the object is some class. So see, we see one property in the object, which is some class, which is a function because we assigned the function into the class. Okay. Then we do const bob. We create a new. So instead of actually calling some class directly, I'm calling it from the object. So I'm actually instantiating a new some class by referring to where it is inside the object. Cool. And then I console log Bob. Okay, and Bob is an object of some class. So it's a some class, an instance of some class. That's what it is. And it has a property of name, which is empty. And it has a function called log something. Okay, which is right there. So it does a job. You can do a lot of other cool things, but most of the time I've seen decorators use is to do something exactly like this. Like, let me show you an example. So I have to go change to another folder. Open folder. I want to go to my stencil folder. Or do I have that in my personal projects? No, I say. Where did stencil go? Best projects, views, felt, JS practice, this helpers, JS practice, Gatsby. Repo React, I think it's in here. Yep. Svelte. Okay, wait, did it just duplicate everything? Okay, I'll figure that out later. Okay, personal. So here in Stencil, then we're gonna open up this folder. And it's loading. Because in Stencil, basically, if you're not familiar with Stencil, Stencil is a compiler created by Ionic, who creates a lot of those really cool components and frameworks for oftentimes geared towards Angular developers, but now it kind of works with everybody. But the Stencil compiler allows you to make web components and full applications straight out of Stencil. So you can just not use React and Angular and just use Stencil. And the way Stencil syntax works is that it's kind of a mix of React and Angular. So let me show you a component, not there. It's compiled already. Components. And here we go. It's going to load. Let me get rid of this window here. So here this is Decorator saying, hey, this class is a component. And basically has this information in it. So we're passing into the Decorator this information, so that way it can add those properties to this class. That's one example. And that's how it becomes like an HTML tag. So basically a way that it knows, because what Stencil is doing, it doesn't, when you're using like React or Angular, it's kind of interpreting itself to know that when you put in like an HTML tag out of a component, that's a component. But the browser actually has a built-in functionality, I think it's called like create element or something like that, where if you can create an element as long as you name it with some sort of hyphen inside of it. So it has to have some sort of hyphen in it. So Stencil's trying to use web standard code. It doesn't want you to have to ship a framework with your final project. So basically it gets the name through the decorator. But that's not the only thing it does. You use decorators for everything here. But again, otherwise, like React, it uses JSX to do your templating. Let's go to blog. I think blog has a good example. So here, like in React, you would create a state object. But here, you just decorate the variable with state, and it just ends up being in the state object. So I can imagine there's probably a function called state, and then what it does, it just takes the target and assigns it into that object, kind of like I did with that function. And there's also one for props. So every time you create a new props variable, you have to decorate it so that way it gets assigned into that props object. So this is one example of using decorators. Angular uses decorators as well. But I'm not going to go load up an Angular project right now. It's just to kind of illustrate that this is something that's actually being used in the wild. It's an experimental TypeScript feature, but it's actually probably the TypeScript feature that I see often used in a lot of frameworks, because it creates a great way of just taking something IDing the things that the user is doing, and then behind putting them into like an object or array behind the scenes without the user having to think a lot about it much. I can't remember. I think it's Full TS. It's a framework, a backend framework I've been learning. They use decorators for like their routes. So if you're doing a get route, you would decorate it with get, and then it actually assigns it to like this route object, and you have all your routes kind of listed in that object. So there's basically that's what decorators do. They allow you to do something with whatever comes next. And then that thing that comes next is the target, so that's why you're passing it into the underlying function. So hopefully you guys found that interesting, and hopefully decorators make more sense now, and how to use decorators. Have a great day and enjoy.